It is 7 o'clock, and we're going to call this meeting to order of the regular school committee on Monday, July 6th. If everybody can please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to read our school committee statement. The committee represents the needs of all Leominster Public School students and places their interests above all others. We will exercise leadership, adhere to our protocols, and base our decision upon a reasoned assessment of all available information. We will advocate for each of our schools and support high-quality public education in Leominster. Having said that, we're going to open up our public comment. If you would like to speak, please do so now, and please give your name and address. Please unmute yourself if you would like to address the committee, and state your name and address, please. One last time, if anybody.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Would you like to address the committee?
I would. I don't know if I'm not, I guess, I thought I heard somebody else. Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. I will speak.
Perfect. Could you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Larry Zuaro, and I live at 8 Brentwood Drive in Leominster.
Great. Please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you so much for opening this up. I just, again, I know that this is not easy for anyone. And I know that no one wants to see any student or schools fail. So I just sharing my brief thoughts on the current situation, because I want my children and the thousands of other children to have a good education when it comes to their schooling. I hope that the committee and the mayor's office and the council is seriously considering calling back people like right now. This week alone, I know of one person who's already left Leominster schools because of pink slips that went out. I am trying to confirm 2 other people that I've heard, but I just know that people are not going to wait around. And the time for calling back people is right now, because you're going to lose a whole bunch of talented people if you don't start calling them back right now. And I know you want to wait for the state, but that's a mistake. And I know that there's probably ramifications behind that, which leads me to my second point, which is the image of Leominster Public Schools is taking a massive hit. It took a massive hit in 2017. It takes a massive hit every year, because the reputation around this area is that Leominster does not value education. And I beg, plead, work together, come to a compromise or something, so that the image is turned around quickly. And some forward thinking to next year. I know the teacher contract's coming up next year. And if it's not next year, it's the year after. And teachers, if I was a teacher in Leominster Education Association, I would in any way accept 000 with a hike in insurance. And also knowing that the city just deposited $6.3 million in their fully funded pension system and have the sizable stabilization fund that they have. So please work together, figure something out. People are leaving. Kids are probably feeling defeated, and teachers that are left are going to be feeling very defeated. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Denise Levesque. I live at 165 Samoset Drive. I am calling in to once again express my disappointment with the city and how they treat the Leominster Public School System. It seems every other year or so, the schools find themselves in a budget crisis, and teachers are always the most disposable and the first to go. The fact that we are even considering cutting 200 teachers is beyond infuriating. Teachers are what make this district thrive, and they should be given the respect that they deserve. Particularly with the pandemic going on, our teachers are going to be more important than necessary. While I'm sure the city will somehow, once again, come in to save the day, but in the meantime, I urge you to look within the department as to where you can cut the budget that is not on the back of teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the school committee?
Hi, Bud.
Go ahead, state your name and address.
Thank you. This is Bonnie Budd, 321 Prospect Street. Tonight, I speak on behalf of our students receiving services outlined on their IEPs, which serve as a legally binding document under U.S. law. These students deserve a voice at the table as they have a very long history of being underserved. Due to COVID and our ever-changing stay-at-home learning models, these students did not receive their direct services outlined on their IEPs. We found that Commissioner Riley has agreed that our students have a lot of groundwork to make up due to those services not received, and they will need additional services and therapy times to compensate for time lost. This means we will need additional staff to carry out those tasks, as our current staff level is already a bare bones service model with not much room for flexibility or adding workloads. Also, when the layoffs occurred in June, I was informed that no IEP was reviewed to compare remaining staff in relation to supporting the IEP services due to union contractual obligations. At this juncture, it's imperative that that be part of our planning process. If not, all our students will fall behind even further, their needs unmet, and the result will be outplacements, which are more costly to the district, and the inevitable lawsuits, more money out of the district. All the students want is to be educated properly and to be supported wholly with equity. Our next steps need to be securing funding through the remainder of the state grant and city funding once finalized to return all the staff plus additional to meet the needs of all students to ensure a safe and equitable return to fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Carrie Noseworthy, and I live at 95 Smith Street.
Great, go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, thank you so much. So good evening, and thank you all for allowing me this time to speak. I want to bring up the crucial topic of mental health and safety during this time. There's so much not known to any of us except that things continue to change, as the superintendent mentioned, and health and safety concerns are changing due to COVID. I'm asking school committee members to contemplate these challenges and turn them into opportunities to make change for better during this time of natural disruption. Clinicians are a piece of the solution, and I know that funding is an issue, but we can also choose to do other things that don't cost money. We can choose to work harder not to discipline the needs of students. We can work to normalize the idea that we all have mental health and incorporate new ideas into the classroom that utilize meditation, breathing techniques, student-led ways to address conflict, and learning to take moments of pause before acting impulsively. Students need this, teachers need this, and families need this. How can we incorporate these policies, which could be free, into learning in the fall? And if somebody doesn't know where to start, the idea of flexibility is a great place to start with. So trauma-informed can just be a teacher or staff being flexible with the needs of their students or families without rush to judgment, using less words, more listening, and ensuring we build up community now more than ever. I also want to raise the concern of the children of CDEI and ensure we don't leave our visual, hands-on technical learners behind in online or hybrid learning. How can we plan now to give learning opportunities to help keep them engaged? They chose non-traditional learning for a reason, and we need to honor that, not just because it's what they want, but because it's what they need. And lastly, during a time of hybrid and online discussions, some students struggle with access to the workflow through the platform of Google Classroom. This is a navigation issue and is not solved with a one-time tutorial. Executive function concerns are real, so whether it's ADD, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or similar struggles, some students are not doing doing the work and not remembering to hit submit.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the committee? One last and final time, would anybody like to address the committee? Please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record. Having no one come forward, we're going to close the open forum portion of our meeting, and we are going to move on to communications, Superintendent.
There are no communications this evening.
Thank you. Then if we can move right into your report.
I'd like to forfeit that time this evening just to get to our presentation.
Certainly. So we can move forward with your presentation.
Okay. For those of you that have a packet, I put a little cheat sheet, and you can see that mine has notes all over it. Just so you know the topics that we're going to address. And there's so much uncertainty that if you have any type of question, a need, something that I may not have addressed initially, just write it down. And if we can't get to it this evening, I definitely will come back to it and send it out to the whole committee. But in your packet, right off the bat, I want to just sort of start this meeting by saying, moving forward, it's July 6th. The summer is going to be extremely busy, but I think it is imperative that we have one school department message, one school department mission, and one school department resolution. We are readily available to answer questions at any point in time. We're here. If we don't have the answer, it's because nobody has come to that point yet. You can reach any of us by phone call, email, text us, whatever. We've been answering emails nonstop because there's so much uncertainty and people are feeling very fragile right now. And so tonight's presentation, just understand this is initial guidance. For us, that means it has been changing week by week by week by week. But we can actually sink our teeth into much of this information and have been very busy. The first piece is really about everyone received the guidelines. We made sure that we put this out the second it was in our hands. Actually, the media got a hold of it before anybody got a hold of it. So we really pushed it out quickly. So the overarching goal about these guidelines is that we bring children back, as many students as possible, to safe learning environments. We want in-person learning, but we want it in a very safe environment. So these new guidelines have really structured the work that we've been doing. If in your plan, if you look starting on page 8, it has the specifics. It's essential, and I can't say it enough. It is so essential that families read this. The concern over masks, students from grade 2, and this was a change, from grade 2 on up, it is mandatory that children wear a mask and that their teachers wear a mask, unless there is a medical, behavioral, or some other challenge that the mask may cause. And so we are going to adjust ourselves, and that's for students and staff. Kindergarten and grade 1, it's not mandatory, but it is preferred. And these masks should be provided by the home and cloth. So I'm looking for some really crafty people to help us construct some adorable children's masks so that they're going to want to keep them on. Adults will want to keep them on. We know that there are exceptions to it and that we need to plan for breaks as often as possible, which will be a challenge all in its own. Any student that is riding a bus, transportation will be its own issue. Right now, we're up to about 20 students per bus. Any age child has to have a mask on while riding the bus. Could that change as the summer progresses? Let's hope, because many of our students, at least 2/3 of our population, access our transportation. So that is a barrier that we have to work together on that. The next piece was around physical distancing. There's been a change there. They're talking about a 3 to 6 foot distance between our students. So chair to chair, 3 feet, but really if we can push it out to 6 feet, that is the best case scenario. And then children, if they go to stand up out of their seat, they've already encroached that space. So we have been going around building by building. We have the square footage, the average square footage in each and every one of our buildings. We're cleaning out those rooms, which is causing us to now need storage. We can't have any extraneous furniture around. We're also looking for ways to individualize student materials, whether it's a bin or a basket, something that they can conceal their own materials so that we can refute any contamination. There's almost sort of this bubble effect. Less travel in the hallways, less movement in and out of classrooms. It's going to take some additional alternative spaces. We've looked at our cafeterias. We've looked at our gymnasiums. The high school has a nice auditorium. We could do classes on a large scale. So trying to construct all these pieces, but safety has to remain. We're shooting for the 6-foot distance and hoping that we don't minimize the 3-footer. So keeping that in mind, furniture is an obstacle. Teacher PPE, student PPE, cleaning, not obstructing any of the work areas, and time on, alleviating time for crews to come in and clean out. So the big piece also with this now is today the family survey went out, and I said this in finance. It went out around 2:15. We had a glitch in the English version. We fixed it. Thank you, Mr. Mamoni. But we've already had over 1,300 people respond, and I'm excited to see that people want to be involved because that's what it's going to take. We need to know who is coming back, who is comfortable in a complete remote setting, because we're going to take care of those students, a hybrid type model, or in an all-in-person. What do our families need? What is their current, mental state or their fears about coming back to school? There's so much to consider. So the input, we have over 6,100 students. We need 6,100 responses because we're planning for every child in Leominster, not just the ones that respond. So however we can promote that, please do. We have a staff survey that will be going out next week. We're going to take care of these details. We'll move on to the staff next week. And for July 20th, sorry to say, but I think we need to have another meeting. I'd like to bring those results forward and see what the information is telling us as we are designing the best plan for Leominster. Currently, we have been working on this for the last 3 months. I have talked to school committee in my Friday memos saying that we had been working with various hybrid models, because if we go to a full reopening, we know how that works. That's what we deal with. But we will need, as others have stated, as many of our staff members back with us to be able to be much more versatile. Currently, the hybrid model that we're looking at, we had 3. There was something called a 2-1-2, where I would go on Monday and Tuesday, buildings would shut down on Wednesday, and other students would go on Thursday and Friday. On the offset, you're working remotely on project-based learning. For continuity's sake, we're now looking at the A-B week, traditionally sort of like what our VOTEC students utilize. Students, I would go 5 days a week, consistently, all week long, and my other half of my class would be working on the remote projects, and then we would cross over. That would allow the least amount of cross-contamination, small class sizes. We talked about the need to assess our students the first day that we see them. This is an opportunity to get at each and every one of our students. And then the third plan, and we have to submit all of these by August. The third plan is for remote. There have been some different stories, varying stories about whether they should homeschool or contact us. We're asking that you contact the Leominster Public School System. We are building a remote platform. One of the things that we are purchasing is a virtual platform for students at home to work through, and that's K through 12. So when parents say, I think I'm going to homeschool, please just reach out to us and have a conversation, because we want to keep all of our Leominster students attached to our schools so that there is this easy transition in which to come back, because we've got to come back someday. It has to happen for us. And so if we can stay connected and keep a seamless transition, it's only in the best interest, and we will support any family in whatever they choose. at this point. A part of that remote learning as well is it seems that there may be a change to the school calendar, which we have to come back and talk about. The commissioner at this time is looking to front load the first 3 to 5 days for teachers only. Our staff, they picked up the ball and started running with this remote learning, which we were in a triage situation. That's not true remote learning, distance learning. They dug in, they taught themselves how to put classrooms together, resources. It was amazing. We want to make sure that they have all the professional development. And I know, Isabel, this is what you were asking about, where we are going to front load professional development for all of our staff right at the beginning of the year. And in doing so, the commissioner is saying that the students' school year may be 177 days instead of the 180. So it keeps the balance. We'll still have the same start date, but students will have less days, and they're looking at the length of a day for a student right now, because all of these factors are so compelling. So we are going to front load the professional development for the teachers. We all need it. And imagine we get all of our students back and we can then give them that to go home with their one-to-ones and actually do some incredible projects and some work. So we feel pretty good about that. Some updates since the last time we met is really around a few major funding sources. The first was we received information that the state is projecting $225 per child for PPE. So the protective materials that we needed, that we all just sort of shook our head and said, okay, nobody budgeted or planned for that. We're now slated to get just shy of 1.4. You have to order quarterly amounts, and our first bill was $330,000. So we know what the state is offering us is going to be a tremendous help, and that we're not scrambling to say, how are we going to disinfect our buildings? How are we going to keep our students safe? It's being built in. And so that comes through a grant opportunity. And the messaging today said that those grants would be open and accessible by the end of this week. So that's great news, although we need to order yesterday to make sure we get these things. The other big piece that was compounding this work really was around the devices. As we went to shut down quickly in March, we didn't know what to do. We have some devices, not enough devices. We tried to get parents to use their devices. And then if our programs, they didn't connect or we couldn't get them on our network, it was really a mess. So it was essential that we have district devices for every single one of our children. We bought just over 1,000 in May. We scrambled to find money for that. And then as of last week, the city is picking up and filling in the gap for us so that this isn't even a barrier anymore. Every child can access technology. And we have hotspots in case they can't get connected. We still have families that don't have any connection. So a device is only as good as the power behind it. So now through the city's help, we've assured that. So the three overarching pieces were PPE, were Chromebooks, and staff. So I had said from the onset, anything that can be alleviated alleviates any financials for us to use for staff. As of last week, we pulled back 8 teachers. We knew the Chromebooks were secured, so we took from our CARES money the same amount and brought back 8 staff members. We needed to purchase the online components, which is about $200,000, which leaves our public schools with about $400,000+, which we're going to use for staff. So that's over $900,000 for teachers. We need to get them back in the classroom and help us build these plans out. So we will be enacting as soon as possible, hopefully making some more callbacks this coming week. There's also some grant opportunities. We're writing grants every opportunity that we get, and we're still waiting for the governor's budget. We don't know when that's coming out. We're hearing into the fall, but we need to move forward at this point. And so our next steps really are about outreach. We're outreaching to our staff, we're outreaching to our families and our students, business partners. We're talking with AIS right now about some possible donations of PPE that they want to give us. The Rotary Club is helping us with shields for our nursing staff, and we're ready to keep going. Some great things are our programs are starting to open. Remote special ed and ELL programs started today. We're doing an in-person Creative Choices starting next week. We opened up 100 slots. We have about 60 students right now, so hopefully that is a good test for our buildings and see what's happening. But as our programs are developed moving forward, we will be coming back to the committee several times. It's going to be a long summer. The 20th, we should have a nice framework for you. We will know the survey results, but by August, we as a committee have to decide, which plan do we want to really say to the state, this is where we need to go. We know we need students in front of us. We know that, but we need to be really safe about it and conscious, and anything that we can do, we're going to try. We've asked for a few task force to come together because I think more minds and some fresh thoughts might help as we look at these spaces and availability. And we have people outside of their certification saying, I don't mind, I'll teach a class, or I can do this, I can do that. So whatever it's going to take, we will get it done. But moving forward, I just want to reiterate again, we need one school department message. We need one school department mission, and together we need to resolve this and not become divisive, because this is about the students of Leominster. And if we can get them in front of us, then we have hit our goal. And we need to keep safety, safety, safety as much as possible. So thank you. And I'm open for questions. Please understand, if I don't have the answer, it's because it's initial guidance. I can get whatever you need, and I will shoot it back to the whole committee.
Does anybody in the committee have any questions for the superintendent at this time?
I do. I have a
Go
quick-
ahead, Isabel.
This is the only one I have right now. I'm sure there will be more to come, so I will just be emailing you. But the one that popped into my head right now is you talked about the hybrid model of the AB week. So I'm just, my main question, and I don't know if you have the answer to it yet, but so the students who are remote learning in the B week or whatever, they're going to have the same teacher, but that teacher is in charge of both in-classroom teaching and remote learning teaching? Right. Okay, I just wanted to know if there was an idea floating around of having a remote learning teacher and students having two teachers. I just didn't know if that was anything finalized or if that's just an idea floating around, because I think it's going to be really difficult for staff in particular to do both at the same time.
Right. So once again, this is all contingent on our union talking with us and helping us through this. So they're part of the conversation because they're on the front lines. They understand this best. So if I'm in week A and you're week B, we get these same lessons. So you're not double planning. It's the same lessons. So it's really about management. And so that's when we said, we need to do some professional development around that, because you've really got to think ahead.
Right.
How to manage this. And hopefully it's only for the short term, but we need to get some data on our students. We need to figure out where they're at. So we want to help with the professional development, lay that out for them. We also identified there was a handful of programs that it has been suggested by the state that they go every single day.
Okay.
So we might have just a few programs that could be on an AM and PM schedule, but they go every single day. So yes, so we're there for consistency's sake. It's nothing perfect. The best part I loved about this guidance, they say right at the very beginning of this, plan is one thing, but the execution of it is going to be incredible.
Right.
It's really going to take an army to get this done.
Right. I just couldn't imagine. And I'm not an educator, but teaching a
That's-
class and at the same time trying to answer questions from students who are remote learning that week, doing either the same lesson or the lesson that the students who are in your classroom are doing the following week, and doing both
Right.
at the same time. And I just wanted to see if that was just a thought.
It is,
Teachers,
depending on
that's
how you
job.
do it, it can be an increased workload.
Right, exactly. So just wanted
So we'll work all of that out, yes. And we are looking at, there are some, we need to make sure that our teachers can come back. There have been some talks. A few people have addressed us and said, it's not okay for me to come back. So we have those individual issues that we need to solve as well. But definitely some remote teachers are on the forefront.
Thank
And
you.
whatever it takes, we'll support them.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Does anybody else from the committee have anything they would like to ask a question of the superintendent?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, Peter.
Based off of the initial kind of measurements of the square footage, after everything's been removed, are we finding that there's adequate space in most of the buildings and in the classrooms, or are we going to have to look into off-site locations or converting a lot of what would normally be communal space into learning areas for now, like libraries and cafeterias, stuff like that?
Yes, 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 and yes. So we have the square footage per room. Some of these buildings, they have these unique features that you want to take and be able to remove these things, but it would take a sledgehammer. So we're looking at corners and crevices. We're looking at definitely the libraries being used, the cafeteria being used, parts of the gymnasium, and having adaptive spaces. It's just going to have to happen. Just because the 6 feet feels better. Our class sizes tend to range in about 30. So we're planning for every student, regardless. We plan for everyone coming back because they're all entitled to come back. And so if the numbers stay where they're at, we are going to have to look at alternative spaces. And the name of the game this year is be nimble and be ready to pivot whenever you can.
I guess a follow-up to kind of go along with that goes back to what Isabel brought up. If we do have to expand into other areas, even for a hybrid model, are we going to require more staff? Because now we have 2 groups of kids that are split up into 2 separate spaces, in addition to whoever is learning remotely that way.
Yeah, so the parameters, all of that has to be discussed to make sure that the needs of students. Oftentimes in our classrooms, there's not just one teacher. We could have a tutor, a para, you name it. We're usually loaded with people. So it's all hands on deck. Every administrator is going into rooms. We've talked about it. Anybody that we have around, because it's going to take everybody. And we sort of just have to lower the bars and say, okay, even though this is what I've always done, I'm willing to help. So we've considered all aspects of that already. Yeah, typical doesn't mean number anymore.
Would anybody else like to ask a question? Go ahead, Melissa.
Hi, sorry, a child just decided to come running into the room at the time I unmuted. So a lot of the questions that I'm hearing from parents tend to focus around the high school level, where the elementary schools tend to be a little bit more contained. Their classroom for the day is their classroom for the day.
Mhm.
So one of the concerns is, will they be contained in one classroom for the day at the high school, or will they shift throughout the school day to different specials into a science teacher, a math teacher? Will there be the specials option of theater, that sort of thing? And then the second piece is, with the current layoffs that are in place, are we able to fully staff CTEI so that we're compliant?
Okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
So at the high school level, we have been working with the team up there, trying to build actual teams so that there is the least amount of traffic. The hallways is something that we are being advised as little traffic as possible. If we have beautiful science labs up there, so students need access to those science labs. So if they're going to move into that room, we want to make sure that we're cleaning behind each other, but keeping movement down to a minimum. And it could be flexible. So if they're there on maybe half their day on Monday is science. And so we don't have to move every single period. We want to create the least amount of traffic so that right now we're building that schedule with the high school and saying, how can we do that? So if we keep tight teams and have students move less, maybe teachers move more, and stay in the same wing, or 4 classrooms side by side, whatever we can do to keep it contained and keep cleaning. We're all going to have to be a part of the cleaning, making sure our desks are clean, we're washing our hands, all of that. And then right now, if it were a full reopening, lunch would most likely be in a classroom. If we do a hybrid, we believe that we could actually have lunch in the cafeteria space. With half of the students. So that's a consideration as well. So depending on what model happens, it's where we go. And always, staffing is going to be our issue. So full reopening requires full staff. And that's where we started with all of this, and we hold to that.
Does anybody else from the committee wish to address the superintendent at this time?
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead, Ron.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is to piggyback on Mike's question, and also I think part of Melissa and Isabel. When Mike was asking about the increased work for the teachers, do you know what the percentage is versus the full staffing versus the staffing that has already happened because of the layoffs? What's the increase in percentages of their workload?
Well, we're really hoping not to increase their workload. We're trying to change the workload. Because if half of your responsibility is these remote packages and half is in class, that's the professional development that we all have to do together and put the resources behind them. So I don't want to say that we're increasing their workload. We're probably changing the way we look at it, but we need to work on that, Ronnie.
All right. Well, I just because I know there's been a lot of as you can well tell, there's been a lot of mumbling and grumbling out there because of what's happened, and I know the big question is and I know you said that you're not going to try and increase the workload, but if the students are going to be partitioned in the classes, and I know you were saying with the hybrid model, question of whether the kids would be able to eat in the cafeteria or not eat, or still eat in the classes, that still would require some work on the part of the teachers.
Right. Yeah, we've considered that as well. We've considered that, and we have a potential plan for it. It depends if that's the model that we go for. Now, remember, if we're in a hybrid, teachers would have half their students.
Yeah.
At the high school, we figured we'd have students about 12 to 16, roughly about 16 per class, worst case scenario. And at the elementary, somewhere between 12 and 15 per class.
Now, when you say 12 to 16, is that going on the concept that you're going to have classes in the morning and classes in the afternoons, or
no?
Is it going to
be all day?
All right. I'm just asking.
Yep, 5 full days.
All right.
So that's a lot. That's a lot. We can get a lot done.
Yeah.
One more question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
As a parent also of younger kids, a lot of us had to take on the teaching from home model and had to learn the Google Classroom technology quickly ourselves. Is there a plan, or can we think of a plan to be able to engage and teach parents this new
Yeah.
virtual platform, since for especially for the younger kids, they're
Yes.
going to need to get trained on that as well really
Yeah.
quick.
So we have found that that's an excellent question. Thank you. Our students were the most flexible. And I could call up a student and say, how do I get into this Google? They're trying to pull me in and separate me into another meets and blah, blah, blah. The kids are very facile with this. But we definitely need a parent training as well. And we actually want to limit. One of the things that we heard by the end of the school year when we started calling home, we were trying to check engagement. Why were some students super engaged, others weren't? Where was the problem? And many parents said it became too much communication. I was hearing from 4 and 5 and 6 teachers every single day, and it was too much. So part of it is in creating these teams or these bubbles is to say, okay, who's communicating what when? Because families were on overload, trying to learn a platform, trying to teach. And then I actually had parents say to me, could you please take me off of your Sunday email? I was a little offended, but I got over it. It was just too much. Too many people were reaching out. So the finite little things tend to be the most important. And if our parents don't understand how these platforms work, how are they going to support students? There were times when parents were upset because a teacher was reaching out saying, your child's not accessing. Yes, he is. I see him every day on the computer. We can see everything on our end. So I could say, nope, I saw Johnny logged on at 8:25 and he logged off at 8:26. Don't know what he's doing on the computer, but so we were able to give those bits of information. But you're right, Melissa, we need to train our families if that is going to be in their homes, which I predict at some point in time, it is going to be back in our homes based on what's happening right now in the country. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
To piggyback on that, Paula, we would also need that training in other languages as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So just to make a note of that.
Yeah.
The other comment that I wanted to just clarify, and I know the answer, but want everyone to know the answer, is that at this point in time, we are not eliminating any programs. There's still going to be CTEI, there's still going to be LCE, there's still going to be art and music and those kinds of opportunities, correct?
Correct. We just felt from the initial move that everything is important for students, and what's important for one may not be as important for another. But you would be amazed that someone in the arts program, that's what keeps them connected to us, or someone with a sport, or someone in LCE or CTI. They're oversubscribed, right? So many students want to be in that program. So we made sure that it was sort of an equitable lens with a safety lens. And when we talk about safety, we always think about physical safety. We also have to think about academic safety. Who learns best in what environment? So we have something for everyone. We might have to share a few people from the get-go, but I don't think that there's any program that would be denied to a student. We'll figure that out. So 0 programs at this point have been cut.
Go ahead, Ron.
You just picked my mind on something. When you were saying that in the nurse's office or in one of the rooms, if a student starts exhibiting symptoms or has symptoms of the COVID, and you got to separate them for the rest of the classes.
Yep.
I hate to be the heretic. Is there a drop dead amount of kids that have to be exhibiting symptoms before all of a sudden you close the school down?
So I'm glad you asked that, Ronnie, because I forgot. In your packets later on, if you look on page 16, there are future protocols coming out, and that is one of them. Because it doesn't, depending on the age and who's exposed, it doesn't seem that the whole school or the whole district would have to shut down. But Desi would like us to hold on to that, and that they are going to give future protocols around that. Should it be this scenario, this is what you do.
Well,
If it's this scenario, this is what you do. But what we did start doing last week was we had to build isolation rooms in all of our nurses' offices. So those are, most of them are up right now. So we've built them in there. And we've been staying in close contact with our Board of Health. And we had those inspected, and they look good. And children can be seen through like a plastic wall or window, so that nobody's left unattended as well.
well, I asked because I saw that where it says, including when a school or classroom would need to shut down. That's on page 6.
Correct.
I read that, but there's no numbers. There's no drop dead date or drop dead
No.
number, and because what's happening in Arizona and Florida and Texas,
Correct.
I had to ask the bad question.
Yeah, that's why, Ronnie, I said this is all initial
I
guidance.
know everything's
It-
a moving
it's-
target. I know. I get that.
But that is coming out. We know that that's coming out. Because another piece that we're facing right now is if students were to move in, and it's summertime, so it doesn't affect us, but once we're in session, if a student comes in from one of these hotspots, they have to quarantine for 14 days before we can even enroll them. So I want, the guidance has got to be so clean, so that we can do a really nice job in our enrollment center, in our nurses, in our buildings, just to make sure. So there's all sorts of protocols coming out, but they seem pretty easy to follow.
And
Oh, yeah.
those hot spots might change as
Yeah,
time goes on.
I was gonna say,
Right.
I have a sneaky suspicion that it's a moving target. Nothing
Correct.
Nothing is etched in stone. Nothing.
No, nothing is.
So anybody else who hasn't spoken? Sue?
Yeah, this is Dean. I have a few comments and questions. First, I think the minority community needs to be represented with the school reopening plan, as well as the those with children with special needs. That is paramount to the reopening. We're a diverse community, many different ethnic, cultural sorts of things that I've witnessed and heard, misunderstandings coming from certain families, having a difficult time connecting to the internet, whatever it might be. But this is a very diverse community, made up of many different ethnic groups, religious groups, whatever it might be. A questionnaire is great, but it's the same questionnaire that's going out to everyone. And I think we have to include them. If we're really going to have a reopening plan, then we must include them. I think special needs students were sort of left out. It's very difficult to meet the demands of those students and to try to teach them remotely. And also the same thing in a lot of cases with the minority community. So they absolutely have to be involved in the reopening if we're going to include everybody. And some people may fill those out. I heard people filling them out right away today. And it's just like the census. Some may fill it out, and then you have to reach out to the community. And I think that's two groups that need to be there. Second is that the high school is a building of many doors and entrances. There is a way so that students are encouraged either by group or themselves to move freely in the outside of the building to connect in the next classes, so that they're not in the corridors. And we're talking about class bell rings, class changes, and you make sure that somebody's at every door and you don't go in unless you get another pass. Those are the kinds of things that have to be encouraged. Thirdly, I think we need to know what spaces are going to be available. The school committee needs to know what spaces are available. Are we having gym? Is gym going to be physical education going to be taught all day? What rooms are going to be available based on this new plan? And then we can see how many students each building will hold on each day. And if we're not going to use the cafeteria for cafeteria space, then somehow or another we need to sort of break that up, again, to thin the amount of students that might be moving through the building, and it will also be occupied in the classroom. So before we go to any plan, I would like to know what are the available spaces and what classes will be taught. Will there be lunch in the cafeteria? Then we'll have an aggregate, or we'll have a wholesale number of square footage of available space to place students.
I,
Go ahead, Paula, you can respond if you want to.
Yeah, so currently, we do have all of our programs running. So there will be gym classes, there will be art class, there will be music class, there'll be CTI class. So the big issue is around the cafeteria, which are very large spaces for us to access. Depending which model we go for, if we do a full reopening, then students must eat in their classroom. So then we would have access to those spaces. At the high school, we have an auditorium that we could use. So the extended spaces, they're limited, but they're very large spaces so that they can be combined programs out there. So that's part of our study as well. So we can provide that.
Can I ask a
And
question?
then also the CARES Act provides the funding for professional development, for retraining, for those who need to sort of assimilate into the new structure, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're prepared for that.
Sue
I
Kohler
would
was
like to-
next.
Well, I still have to comment. So what I would like to see is, I would like to see the plan before the next, if we're gonna, what I don't want to do is show up to a school committee and that's the first time we see the information on the Thursday before. Even if it's at draft level, I would like to see what the plan is. So if you know on a Tuesday, that's fine. Just put stamp draft on it and get it to us so we can take the time to go over it. And that would really be helpful if we already have a draft of a plan, and if whether it's next week or the following week. What I don't want to do is get it on a Thursday or Friday and then we meet on a Monday. So anything we can get ahead of time, even if it's a piece of it, would be helpful.
Yeah, we have to draft all three regardless. So those would be submitted. I spoke to Eileen about that. All three will be submitted to you in a timely fashion.
but
And I
this,
think it's really important, Dean, that when it is submitted, that everybody on the committee understands it's a draft and we should not be, sort of telling the community this is what's going to happen until we make that decision as a group. Because as a draft, it might be tweaked. We just need to be really transparent with the community so there's not a lot of mixed messages out there.
can I say
Yeah, I think, no, let me just clear that up. If you misunderstood what I said if we have a piece of it, we can stamp draft on it so that the school committee could have this in advance so we can look at it as we go along. So we are all hopefully at the same point when we vote on this reopening plan. The other thing is we have to be mindful before we start spending CARES Act money and allocating it, that the school committee and or the mayor, depending on people's different interpretations, need to approve this funding in similar fashion that we do in the budget. I haven't seen anything yet that's come to the school committee. I've looked at all the past since May 4th. I have looked at all of the minutes and we haven't seen anything yet. So if we're appropriating CARES Act money, we're doing that ahead of time because the school committee and or the mayor needs to vote on that ASAP.
can I say something?
Who is that?
It's me, Ronnie.
Ron? You know what? Sue was
Go ahead.
next,
All right.
and then you
Okay.
can
All
say
right.
something because Sue had
All
her
right.
hand raised
No problem.
before Dean. Go ahead, Sue, and then Ron.
Okay, I just wanted to ask kind of along the same line as Dean, Paula, like who is on the reentry plan team? I met up with some other school districts to see what they're doing. And there are clearly teams of people, not just administrators, but, do you have parents involved? And, I think that's an important piece. So kind of along the lines of what Dean said, representation from special ed or whatever. Who's on your entry team?
Right. So because we're putting this all together right now, we've had administrators, we've had teachers, and now with the survey, there's a place for people to comment if they want to be a part of it, be a part of it. We've been working with our special education parents. Our liaisons have been reaching out to families, trying to see what information we can gather. But today's survey would be the first indicator of who is interested in being on that. So James Riley has been putting teams together to move forward so that it is a balanced approach.
And Superintendent, the survey went out in Spanish as well as English.
And Portuguese, 3 languages. We do everything in the 3 languages.
Thank you. Ron, go ahead.
Well, all these plans, whether using the cafeteria or the assembly hall, none of these plans can be gone after, because I know Paula, the superintendent, she has to pass that through DESE, Jeff Riley, first, before we even start thinking about, putting it in front of the school committee or having the mayor look at it. Jeff Riley is the one who's going to decide that, not us. Am I right, Paula?
Well, we have to submit the plans to the state, but it would be great to have the school committee's eyes on it for something that maybe we didn't consider or we didn't think of. I would want the school committee's approval for each one of the plans, just to make sure that we have covered all our bases. So
Right,
I plan on submitting it to you prior to submitting it, right?
Riley.
So Ron,
Go ahead. I'll stop.
yes, but he's given us some directives and some framework for us to abide by, but each school district's plan might look different depending on what type of district and population they have. So I do think it is something that the school committee needs to vote on. And for instance, Dean mentioned, utilizing various entranceways at the high school to get to and from classes, so people are outside and not necessarily in the hallways. Feedback like that is, important. In case somebody hasn't thought about that, or, moving teachers as opposed to moving kids from classroom to classroom. Maybe the math teacher replaces the English teacher for that same group of kids, that kind of thing. So you're moving one body and not, 15 or whatever. So there's lots of good, kinds of feedback. And I would encourage, anyone in the public who is watching this or who's participating via phone, that if you would like to get involved, this is the time to, do so and have a voice, because it's going to impact you, in particularly.
Correct.
Yeah. Does anybody else who hasn't spoken yet have any comments or questions at this time regarding this plan?
I do.
Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the plan for testing in the state guidelines? Testing for COVID-19. I'm not talking about MCAS. I'm talking about testing for the coronavirus.
For students?
Students and teachers.
Students and staff. I mean,
Yep, that protocol's due to come out.
because this is nuts
Mike,
with
this
drug testing. That's all. I mean,
Mike,
I know,
Mike, this
I
is Dean.
heard about the same thing.
Go ahead, Dean.
Mike, what I was going to say is at city buildings, what we've been doing is we have a designated person, and that person checks the temperature. We make sure nobody's ill and not feeling well and sick. We make sure everybody has a mask. We make sure, it's not that hard. It just becomes a way of life. But, we got to get away. Remember, we've gone to this culture of staying home when we're, sick, and staying home from school and work and everything else, to going to the, drugstore and spending $50 on things, and then, medicines and over the counter, and then coming to work. So we've got to get over that culture of coming to work. We used to give an award to the student that never missed a day of school. Well, you probably suspect that student was probably sick at least one day out of 12 years. So I think that isn't a very intrusive model, and I think it makes everyone feel comfortable, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to just take people's temperature and make sure they're okay and they have a mask on them before they enter the building. And I would suggest you could do something very easily like that for staff and students. And I honestly, at first it was a little strange. It felt weird, but it's just become a way of life for us now.
so first of all, I don't think we have the staff to take everybody's temperature at the schools, but more importantly, it's at this point, it's a false sense of security
Right.
I mean, the science now is that 50% of the people who have it are asymptomatic, which means they're the majority of the spreaders. So
Michael, that's one of the,
you're going to have kids and staff come into the school who have it and are spreading it, and you don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't know, but at least if somebody's got most of the time people will have at least a fever of some sort, or at least we want them to, if they are if they don't have any symptoms and we at least want them to have a mask. And so at a checkpoint in the morning, you make sure at least 2 or 3 of those things are done, at least that. I don't think there's going to be like statewide random testing. I don't think the state's set up for it yet at this point, but I don't think by August or September, there's going to be testing for every single person in the system for 6,000 people plus staff.
But you know,
And Michael, they don't want us taking temperatures of students. So that came off the list. It's really about the students need to show up with a mask and a lot of hand washing, very strong hand sanitizer. Temperatures will be taken unless there's some type of symptom that's shown.
Yeah. And again, the hand washing thing, I don't know why we're still fixated on this. This is airborne. 99% of the transmission is in the air through breathing. The stuff about sanitizing and hand washing and cleaning surfaces, that was the advice back in, February and March. With.
Correct.
At this point, you can clean all you want and you'll cut your risk by 1% because 99% plus is airborne transmission.
Yeah.
but
Masks can be important.
The masks are super important, but
to
really
Michael's
testing is pretty important too. And I don't know how we plan to do. I mean, we're doing what the state's telling us to do, but doing this without testing seems kind of crazy to me.
But I think my testing is only taking a picture in that time. So you could be tested and test negative, but 3 days later, contract it. So you can't be tested every day or even every, month, probably, realistically. So I think, it is going to be a struggle because most of the people are asymptomatic, or a good portion are asymptomatic and would not, have a fever or any signs.
That's
of
precisely
having
the
the
point.
virus.
That's precisely the
And
point.
that is, Mike, why we have to make sure that we communicate and be transparent with the public on all of this. Because I agree with you, there is that hype about, it doesn't hurt to have clean surfaces to sanitize, for colds and other flus that circulate. But I think it's our job to make sure the public understands it. And that way, each parent and each teacher can manage their own, personal decisions with all of the correct information.
And I think that's why we're, offering parents, families, the option of, working and being educated remotely, no matter, what scenario. Even if we are all going back to school, people would still have that option to choose to educate their students remotely, because we are trying to give families, some power in decision making on how their students would be educated. So I think that's important. And I did want to say before we move on is I did want to thank the city for getting us and augmenting our Chromebook supply. That has been a huge piece of needed technology for our students, and certainly a cost saving, to the school system, so that we can put that money towards, teachers in front of the classroom. So thank you to everyone on the city side for that. We appreciate it. If no one else has any questions, Dean, you have another question?
I just had to go back to that piece about the CARES Act and the funding, and whether or not the school committee has accepted that in the proper fashion or not. And if we're already spending money from those accounts, then we need to do that pretty quickly. There is a process. Like I'm going to submit to the city council, but at the same time, there is a process, and I just want to make sure we adhere to that process.
Yeah, school committee has not voted on grants before, but I can hand in how the money is being allocated. That's not a problem.
The school committee should be voting on grants, accepting grants when we get them. That's the school committee's function. So we should.
I don't think we've ever voted on grants. We've always been informed that we received various grants, but we've never voted on them.
We should be. And I'll check tomorrow just to make sure, but I believe that there is an approval process for the CARES Act. I just want to make sure they very clearly the other day DOR specifically addressed the fact that we best make sure that we deal with the CARES Act money very carefully and make sure there's an accounting for it and good accounting for it, and that we follow all the processes. And that was very clearly articulated to us as the city managers and mayors across the state. So I will recheck that tomorrow and get back to everybody.
Yeah, that would be important, Dean. And then from the school system side, maybe Melanie can take a look, whether there's anything that's come down through DESE, about the usage of the CARES Act as well.
Yes,
so that we make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yep, we can submit the verbiage from DESE. We have it.
Excellent. Perfect. All right. Moving forward, we are going to look at the approval of the minutes of the June 15th, 2020 meeting. If I can have a motion.
So moved.
Excellent. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right. Is there any omissions, errors, or corrections that need to be made for those minutes?
Nope.
Having none, if everyone can say aye.
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 And is there anybody opposed?
I'm sorry, there were corrections.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, let me find them first. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, what page of the minutes? What page? Okay, where is it? All right, right here. Under item 2B, the second to last paragraph says Suzanne Kohler, the superintendent. I think it should say thank the superintendent.
I like that better.
Is build on what we have and move forward as a community, not and in a community. In that same paragraph.
Good catch.
As a instead of and a. Yep.
Those were the only two that I picked up. Sorry.
All right. So given the corrections just made, again, I just want to make sure everybody's approving it. Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move forward with the subcommittee report, Finance Subcommittee. Mike, could you please give us an update from today's meeting?
Yep. So Finance Subcommittee met today. All were present. We approved some warrants to bring to the full school committee and a transfer request. We reviewed the end of year statement as it currently is. The financial information is in your packet. There are a few things left that can still process, so the exact number could change a little bit, but it's close to right. I don't know if anybody had any questions about anything in there, or if you'd like me to move straight to the warrants.
Why don't you, if no one has any questions, we'll move to the warrants.
All right. So from the general fund, we have warrant 48 for $286,341.53. Warrant 49, $2,284,264.80. Warrant 50, totaling $91,451.73. Warrant 51, total $7,672,550.39. And warrant 52, $1,624,581.81. From grants and revolving funds, we have several. Warrant 48, total $2,648.82. Warrant 49, $239,362.79. Warrant 50, $127,062.26. Warrant 51, totaling $697,636.35. And finally, warrant 52, totaling $1,840,000. Sorry, $1,840,527.30. Finance Committee, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, could I have a second
I'll
for that
second.
motion? Thank you, Sue. Any comments, questions? If not, everyone can say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Do you want to do the transfer now or later?
Why don't we do it now?
All right. So we previously, to balance things out, we transferred, I think, $537,000 from wages and salaries to expenses. And it turns out we overshot by a little bit. So what we have in front of us is a motion to transfer $11,000 back from line 4230, maintenance of equipment on the expenses side, to 4110, custodial services on the wages and salary side. It's primarily to cover the last 2 days of custodial services. It's a little bit more than we think we need at the moment, but just in case. Finance did look at that and approve that, so I would like to make a motion that we approve that transfer.
Could I have a second? Thank you, Sue. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, this is Dean. I have a question for Mike.
Yep.
But why are we carrying over $550,000 at the end of the year on the salary? You said salary, correct?
Yes. No, we're not carrying over 500. At the last meeting, we had excess salary and extra expenses, and we transferred to balance like we do every year. And we overshot slightly. We're moving 11,000 back to wages and salaries to cover some end of the year payments.
So we didn't finish with $500,000+ in salaries.
No.
No, we didn't.
I didn't hear, Mike. Did you answer that? I didn't hear it.
No, because we transferred that to expenses at the end of the year.
You transferred what to expenses?
We transferred $537,000 from the salaries line to the expenses side of our general fund. That was the last meeting or the meeting before? I think it was the last meeting. Maybe it was the one before. It's in our minutes.
Right. So
we just approved.
You're agreeing with me. You're saying that we finished with $550,000 in salary, in a salary line item.
537,000, yes, but that's not how we finished, because we transferred that to general fund, to expenses.
I mean, maybe I'm not.
To pay for expenses.
Right.
Which is something we typically do.
We had savings in custodial overtime because of the closure. We had savings in substitute teachers because of the closure. We saved money on the wages and salary side due to the closure that we were able to transfer to the expenses side to pay expenses.
I understand you transferred it. My question was, you finished with over $500,000 in salary, and then you transferred that to various expense accounts, whatever it might be, to balance out the year.
Yes.
That was my question. Okay, yes. That's all I asked. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
yep,
you.
That's correct.
However, we transferred too much and needed to now transfer this $11,000 back into wages and salaries.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Anything else, Mike, to report?
I think that's it.
Thank you very much. I know policy, Ron, we did not have a meeting.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting and
Right. We've been a little, I guess, preoccupied, but I would imagine we may be busy with maybe if there's, new configuration of expectations coming down with the change of what schools will look like in the future. So then the other thing on our action item is the approval of the SOA funding. And Lorene, I think you were going to assist us with that. Superintendent, is Lorene joined
Yep.
us, or is she going to address this?
Yep, she's on the line. I don't know if she's having
Hi,
health
everybody.
issues.
Sorry about that. I'm on my iPad. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Per the guidance by the Department of Education, this SOA money does require an approval from our school committee. And so we are making sure that we're following the guidance from the Department of Education for this. We have approximately $69,000 that we were told would be SOA money. Of course, right now, we're not exactly sure where that stands, but just for you to know, the work that we've done, we do have a plan for that money. We are suggesting that we would use this money for our preschool population. This obviously includes special education students, students from identified risk groups, and also our model students. So that's approximately 180 students per year. We will be purchasing a research-based early literacy and numeracy program and the professional development that goes along with that. And appropriately, the remote piece of that, so that we would, if needed, we will have a remote piece for all of our preschool teachers to be using. So the $69,000 would be used for a program from, from McGraw-Hill. The program is called The World of Wonders. Again, it is ELA, it is literacy, it is numeracy, and there's a technology component for distance learning or digital learning. And we would be using all of that $69,000 to put that into our early childhood program.
This is Dean. Can you just explain to people that might be listening, and then after LATV or LTV rebroadcast this, can you just explain what the SOA is so people understand it?
Well, I can't explain the formula, but I can explain.
No, I'm sorry. I meant what we're using an acronym, and some people might not understand what it is.
Certainly. So it is the Student Opportunity Act, and based on a formula that the legislature has come up with, each district has been given an allotment of funds. I think I might ask Paula to speak a little bit to the specifics, but it was put in place to work on equity across all of the districts. And I know that's speaking in general terms, but it is Student Opportunity Act. There were some parameters that were required for us to look through and to create the plan. Unfortunately, Leominster did only receive $69,000, but that certainly will be a great asset to our early childhood program.
That was a great job. Thank you, Lorraine.
So I want to add something to that, though, because what they did was they took, based on the Student Opportunity Act, they calculated how much extra funding we got due to the act versus what we would have gotten the old way we did the formula. The 69,000 is the governor's number in his budget, and we have not received that. There's no guarantee that we will. So, I mean, it's important to have a plan because they've asked us to have a plan if they actually give us the money. But right now, we're getting less than we're supposed to. So this is a little, I'm not mad at anybody, not blaming anybody, but it's a little odd to do this because I don't think that 69,000 exists at the moment.
I know, but the state is asking us, Michael, right now to get school committee approval on it regardless, just in case it does come through. It's a nice amount for us to do something with our preschool. It's a great program. It's another platform to use, but we do need school committee approval should the money come through.
Okay. I'm certainly fine with that.
Okay.
If they give us more than they're supposed to and then claim they still gave us the 69,000, I'm not going to be happy.
I know. I'm with you.
Is there a possibility that there'd be more than 69 would come down?
If they actually the
Well, I'm just asking.
legislator, if they actually implement the formula that the legislature passed instead of the governor's interpretation of it, we would get significantly more than that.
If
Yeah,
all
like
of,
2.5 million.
if, if every portion was funded equitably, we would have received more money. However, the governor is funding the economically disadvantaged portion of the Student Opportunity Act at 4%, when all of the other portions are being funded at 14%, leaving Leominster and other gateway cities at a disadvantage again. Which is why we have
Well-
69,000.
Right. Well
And that-
said,
that
Isabel.
ca- That calculation, Isabella, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ron.
That calculation, how was that calculation arrived at?
It was the governor's decision. So the legislature passed the Student Opportunity Act, which would equitably fund every portion of the foundation formula, and it would increase the portion of economically disadvantaged students and communities that would get that money. The governor cut 14% down to 4%. He ultimately increased the pot of money for economically disadvantaged students by 14%, but when it gets split like a pie, when we get our piece, it comes down to 4%. So
But
it's
that-
not equitable.
That pie that gets split, how does that pie get split is my question. How did they make that decision? Go ahead, you can laugh at me.
No, I know.
I'm not laughing at
But
you.
I'm-
You have to ask the governor why he
Yep,
chose
you would have to ask the governor in his
must have-
office.
He must
health
have had some,
insurance
he
and
must have had
and
some economic
short.
parameters.
Yep.
He must have had some economic parameters to slice it like that. You don't just slice a pie and look at it, I'm going to cut it this way. He had to have some reason to do that.
So Ron, he didn't share the reason
ahead.
with us.
The economically disadvantaged portion is the most expensive portion, and that's likely why it received the lessened increase. So that's likely why. You would have to ask the governor and his office why he did that, but
Okay,
it was where the legislature was hoping for a 14% equitable distribution, especially the economically disadvantaged piece, which was the heart of the Student Opportunity Act, and that did not happen in the governor's budget. So that's what we're waiting for.
It also has to be said that the parts he fully funded go to wealthy districts and poor districts alike, and the part he didn't fully fund proportionately goes to the poor districts. So if you're in a rich
Correct.
district, you got almost everything you were supposed to get. The more poor
Correct.
kids you have, the less you got relative to what you were supposed to get. So that's
Correct.
why we are hit pretty hard by this, because we're 9th decile for economically disadvantaged kids in our schools.
Yep. And
Which
now
is
there's
why, I was going to say, which is why we signed on to that letter, Ron, for Gateway communities, advocating that we also get sort of, the amount of money we need to sustain our current level of programming and funding. So, all right. So can I have a motion that if we get the $69,000, this is how we will spend it?
I'll make a motion.
All right. Would
I'll
anybody
second.
like to second? Thank you, Isabel. All those in favor say aye and or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries. And let's hope that we get that amount, or certainly more would be wonderful. So at this point, we have old or new business. We have an enrollment update.
Enrollment is still coming in daily. So we're watching our numbers carefully, and we have put the stall button on school choice until we can get a well-designed plan in place to see if we have any room in the city of Leominster.
Okay, thank you. Under new and old business, we did get the superintendent's evaluation for folks to fill out. About half the people have filled it out and returned it to me. For those of you who have not gotten to it yet, could you please do that soon? I would like for Sue and Isabel and I to be able to compile the evaluations so that we can have a finished document in time for our next meeting, which is July 20th, right?
Correct.
So if people can please get that to us soon, because then that'll be able to give us at least a week to go through it and come up with a formal document for the superintendent. Does anybody else have anything else they for new or old business? Okay, having no one coming forward at this time, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Melissa, all those in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Usually no one is. All right, thank you everyone for partaking in this meeting, and it was good to see everyone. Happy July, and we'll
everybody
see you in a
stay
couple of
safe
weeks.
All right, bye guys.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Arrivederci.